Re-Zero, Volume 5, Chapter 3, Part 1. A Disease Called Despair. He'd been betrayed. Betrayed. Rem, you idiot! When Subaru read the letter accompanying the bag left for him, he spat in irrepressible rage. He was sitting on a hard sofa in a lounge on the first floor of the inn. No one else was around. The reason for that was his prolonged, violent behavior. The innkeeper who'd led him to the lounge hadn't been able to even look him in the eye when answering his questions. A wise decision. That moment, anyone who appeared in Subaru's line of sight was his enemy. And I thought, at least you understood me. The letter was written completely and carefully penned iScript. Subaru, who was still learning the written language, couldn't read anything except iScript characters. Rem had been considerate in that sense, but in light of her abandonment of him, that only shoved Subaru's heart deeper into darkness. The letter overflowed with concern for Subaru's well-being. So much sadness filled his head that he had no chance to realize that. He gleaned only one thought from reading the letter. Even you think I'm useless and powerless, Rem. His conversations at the Cruche residence, his dialogue with Rem the previous night, and Amelia's lecture in the royal capital came rushing back to him. Words upon words piled on him in their voices, rating Subaru for his helplessness and incompetence. He brushed them all aside and seized the perfect opportunity to prove them Subaru Natsuki's value. Or so he had thought. He thought that at least Rem believed he was worth something, yet... Yeah, I get it. You're telling me that I'm dead weight, so you're cutting me loose. And if I don't believe you, you want me to look at how much I've been relying on you. Subaru spat, clenching his teeth as he rose to his feet. The luggage and the allowance Rem had left were lined up on the table in the lounge. There was quite a lot of money in the sack. Apparently, Roswell had left a small fortune in Rem's hands. With that much money at his disposal, Subaru wouldn't have any trouble with daily necessities for quite some time. He knew that was exactly what Rem had in mind when she left it with him. She underestimated him. Did she really think she could betray his trust, leaving him with nothing but money, and expect him to meekly kneel and submit? There was no way he'd do as she pleased. No. Subaru was coming up with all kinds of ways he could use money to break the stalemate. If I hire a dragon carriage and driver, I might be able to get to the mansion. That said, Rem had made careful preparations to trip up any such plans Subaru might have. According to the innkeeper, that village didn't have any establishment that could lend a dragon coach. In addition, the appearance of the fog had thrown off the schedules of carriages that regularly connected the various villages. There was no dragon coach at any price. No doubt Rem had begun planning everything as soon as they'd lodged at that village inn the night before. It was as if she was laughing at Subaru's paper-thin knowledge, politely smashing his options flat one by one. I'll just strand him in that village, stop him from returning to the mansion. Then I'll just have to hoof it. That's stupid. I don't have a map and I can't deal with monsters. If bandits or demon beasts appeared, that chapter would be over. He'd seen word maps several times over, but he didn't know the local lay of the land. Running around aimlessly would reduce his chances of arriving at the mansion to practically zero. It was all a result of his own ignorance. Subaru's lack of education and strength kept letting him down. He had never anticipated having to deal with bandits and demon beasts to begin with. The fact that he'd never carried even a single sword on him was proof of that. He'd had Wilhelm instruct him in the art, but he could do nothing with that training if he set out empty-handed. Subaru hadn't taken such normal, prudent measures because he was relying on Rem. The price of an overnight stay at an inn was far less than the fare for a dragon carriage. Even if he had a small fortune, his inability to procure something of value made it worthless. It was the cost of his lack of education, which was the direct result of Subaru's letting numerous opportunities to study slip away. Well, I can't help that now. I've got to do what I can with what I have. Subaru himself was the root cause of the stalemate keeping him penned in. His knees bounced in annoyance as he tried to pretend he wasn't well aware of that fact. So no hoofing it. I have to get in a dragon carriage. There's gotta be a way. Think. Subaru put a hand to his forehead, desperately reviewing everything he'd seen and heard in that world and everything he'd learned from the people in his original world, trying to come up with a plan. He ran through every memory and shred of knowledge in his head, focusing all of his body's resources above his neckline. And he looked at the possibilities that might exist for breaking out of his cage. This village has no establishment that can lend a dragon carriage. The regularly scheduled carriages aren't available, meaning the village was now occupied by its original residents, travelers who'd arrived by regular carriage, and maybe there's someone who came in on their own dragon carriage like Rem and I did, who stopped over. If anyone were to enter and leave the village freely, they would have to have their own means of transportation. That very inn had stables for the use of its guests. His thought couldn't be far off the mark. To have a dragon carriage, you'd have to be rich. No, a merchant would be perfect. A merchant who hasn't settled down is either working for someone else or a peddler going around with a horse-drawn wagon. It's just basic. The lantern light of Subaru's extinguished hopes began to flicker once more. To find the right person, Subaru immediately went to the innkeeper and explained. At first, the innkeeper was reluctant, but he introduced several merchants, albeit with a strained expression. But most traveling merchants will be intent on shipping goods to their destination. I don't know if any would be willing to take on someone as a passenger. Well, I'll give it a try anyway. Thank you very much for telling me about them. Thanking the considerate innkeeper, Subaru visited the traveling merchants one by one. But in line with the innkeeper's concerns, negotiations proved very difficult. Just as he had claimed, they had little inclination to alter their travel routes, but the situation was far dire than that. Each and every one responded to Subaru's suggestion the same way, shaking their heads. The Mather's domain? Sorry, but I can't go there now, said a very scrawny man as he ended negotiations with Subaru. He stood with the canopied dragon coach as his eyes lingered on Subaru with some sympathy. I hate to say this, but I don't think I'll be the only one saying no. In my case, though, it has to do with the cargo I'm carrying. Cargo? I'm transporting weapons, armor, and other metal wares. Rumor has it, prices in the royal capital for the stuff are through the roof, so tomorrow I'm rushing there with my dragon carriage. My profits are on the line. The man petted the cargo in his dragon carriage as he spoke, gazing distantly in the direction of the setting sun. Then, when he saw the slump of Subaru's shoulders, he adjusted the position of his bandana and said, There are a lot of people who use this as a stopover to the royal capital like I do. That's why this village is pretty well off for its size. So there are merchants who come in 2s and 3s, but they'll probably all turn you down. Yeah, you're the 6th one to say no. That's because every decent merchant is rushing to the royal capital with revenues on the mid. No way around it. After all, there's the uproar over the royal selection. Everyone's caught the scent of gold. So that's how it is, huh? The man's reply and sober expression made Subaru frown as he surmised the reason for his successive failures. Namely, he'd misread the merchants from a business perspective. It wasn't the prospect of a temporary payday that was luring them to throw capital, but the sight of bigger, longer-term profits. For a trader to abandon such plans to accommodate Subaru would be nothing short of madness. The merchant continued. On top of that, there are all kinds of fishy rumors about the Mathers domain flying around. Even if you find someone who's not heading to the capital for profit, they probably still won't go. Fishy rumors? Related to the roast election, by any chance? Groundless speculation, I think. There's talk that one of the candidates is a half-demon, and the lord of those lands is supporting her. But I haven't heard the details of the election yet. Do you know anything? No, I don't know much about it. Subaru led on the spot because he didn't want to be exposed as a related party, which would only make negotiations harder. But covering for Amelia's lineage still left a strange feeling in his heart. As Subaru grimaced like he'd swallowed a bitter pill, the man suddenly clapped his hands together. Oh, that's right. I just remembered someone who might accept your proposal. Seriously? I was pretty much at the point of giving up and falling to the dark side here. I'm not sure what you just said, but it's true. Come on, I'll introduce you. The man patted Subaru's shoulder with an easygoing look and beckoned him forward. Subaru followed a little behind him until he pointed to a building across the road. I'm pretty sure he's been there since last night. Wait here, I'll call him over for you. The man left through the wide-open double doors as Subaru watched him go, looking up at the sign. I feel like it probably says tavern or something. He had only moderate confidence, since the sign he was looking at was written in Rose script, which he had only just begun to learn. The faint whiff of alcohol wafting from the entrance made Subaru about 89% sure he was right. The energetic man the way headed in suggested the people inside would be troublesome. What is this person doing, lugging alcohol while he's traveling? Doesn't this world have laws against steering dragon carriages while under the influence? Back in my world, you'd lose your license with one violation. Not that he was sure there were dragon carriage licenses to begin with. If the newcomer in question showed up looking drunk and dangerous, Subaru resolved to make a run for it and spend as much money as he needed to do so. And just as Subaru hardened such tragic resolve, the man came back outside. Sorry for the wait. Here he is. Hey, Otto, introduce yourself. The man roughly dragged along a young man, practically tossing him forward as they approached. He had gray-colored hair and looked no more than a year or two older than Subaru, though it was a fair bit shorter. He had a slender and fairly symmetrical face. Subaru deemed that, at the very least, this was not the drunkard he had feared. My name's Subaru Natsuki. Sorry to drag you out here. I heard that you just might accept my request, so... Ugh! You stink! You totally reek of booze! His efforts to get negotiations started on the right foot were immediately short-circuited by the scent of alcohol wafting from the other party. The young man before him glowered sullenly, giving off a stench so strong that Subaru's stomach was on the verge of emptying itself. He might not look scary or dangerous, but he was a tottering drunkard nonetheless. Why, hello. Let me introduce myself. My name is Otto. He hiccuped 3 times during his brief greeting. His face red from drunkenness, the young man named Otto looked between Subaru and the other man. So what is it that you wanted? Business? Was it business? My business is... It's kind of a joke right now. Finally, Otto squatted down and suddenly burst into laughter. Subaru, sensing that was the sound of his hopes grinding to a halt, shot a hard glare toward the man who'd introduced them. On the receiving end of that gaze, the man quickly pointed back at Otto. Wait, I didn't deceive you. If you actually meant for this to be an introduction, I'm seriously doubting your head's screwed on straight. It's not fun getting arrested for drunk driving. A student would get sent to the principal just for being in this state. Subaru had salivated at the prospect of finding a solution, and yet the man introduced to him was a drunkard. The man sighed at Subaru's words and roughly shook the squatting Otto's shoulders. Otto, hey, get up, damn you! You're the one who told me to introduce you to anyone who could turn your situation around. What, you're gonna let booze ruin it all? A way to turn things around? Otto's ears quivered, while his eyes, dead until that point, completely changed. With the support of the man's hand, he rose to his feet, as if his drunken state had never been. I have been most impolite. My name is Otto Swain. I am a humble servant, independent merchant, making his way in life as a traveling peddler. Otto faced Subaru and assumed an expression so crisp one could almost hear the snap to attention. While Subaru was speechless at the instant turnaround, Otto examined him from head to toe. I see. It seems that he has a certain degree of status. He certainly has the markings of a good customer. Mr. Keddy, thank you very much for introducing us. Sure thing. You'll be all right from here out, yes? I'll get going then. Don't forget to keep your chin up. And you owe me one, Otto. Otto had brightened to the point one would doubt he'd ever been in his drinks, so Mr. Keddy patted his chest with relief and departed. Subaru watched the man who'd made the friendly gesture leave before turning back toward Otto. The young man had scrutinized him and acknowledged him as someone he could do business with. Otto clapped his hands together, smiling broadly, and began. Well then, let's talk business. What is it that my customer desires? Subaru's breath caught, knowing he could not let him or that chance escape, and he got down to brass tacks. This is a bit of a far-out request to make, but... With that preamble, Subaru explained the situation, careful about what not to say. If Otto said no, he was finished. He spoke as naturally as he could, despite his tension, as he talked business. And then... After Subaru gave him a simplified explanation of events, Otto thought about it a little, then nodded. I do not mind accepting that at all. Hearing his well-formed reply, seemingly coming from an entirely different person than the one brought before him, Subaru grabbed him with both hands in surprise and gave him a good, hard shake. Thank you. I see. You'll do it? That would be a huge help. Seriously, a huge help. Ow, 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 ow. Don't squeeze so hard. But please, wait. I'm glad you are satisfied, but I have conditions too. Otto freed his captured arms from the shaking and retreated a step from Subaru as he spoke. The word conditions made Subaru toad his head. Now that his hands were free, Otto gave a light wave. My dragon carriage is a resource for my business, or rather, my lifeline. I cannot part with it lightly. Of course, this will be lending aid rather than formally loaning the carriage, particularly because there are many disquieting things happening in the Mather's lands at the moment. That's only natural. I wouldn't go as far as to say you can jack up the price, though. Subaru was a little worried that he'd be subject to price gouging. All he could offer was what he had on hand. If that wasn't enough, he'd have to get the price cut somehow. Seeing Subaru's wariness, Otto gently loosened the corners of his mouth. I suppose not. And for all the money you have here, yes? And so, Otto struck first in the negotiations, seizing the initiative as he thrust the conditions to the fore. No doubt he'd already deducted from Subaru's demeanor how much money was in the bag. He pressed a strategy, firmly controlling the pace of negotiations to enhance his own profits even a little, just like a textbook merchant. It was mouth versus mouth, tongue versus tongue. The battle had begun, a verbal clash pitting the speech and the business acumen of both parties against each other. Well, not quite. Is that okay? All right. I'll hand this bag to you then. Can we leave right away? Shock overcame Otto, as Subaru readily handed him the whole bag. The weight of the purse made Otto swallow as he nervously looked at Subaru. What? This isn't how it goes. Normally, both people lay out their demands and then start the negotiations to find common ground, don't they? It's never this easy. There's no meaning in fighting a pointless battle, and if what's in the bag is enough, you'll be granting my request regardless. If all the money he had on hand resolved everything, it was a bargain as far as Subaru was concerned. Otto scowled at Subaru's calm demeanor, probably wondering if he'd been too hasty. This is, perchance, I've been introduced to a very troublesome individual. Relax, I don't intend to cause you any trouble. Not on purpose, anyway. Are you aware that the way you phrase that only makes me even more concerned? Even Otto, a man he'd just met, was indignant at his exceedingly unconvincing statements. However, he sighed in apparent resignation and adjusted his grip on the bag in his hands. Understood. I presented my condition, and you immediately accepted. I do have pride as a merchant, after all. Just allow me to see exactly how much money this... Ah! What is this fortune here? What are you doing handing off something like this so Ah! Shaking the contents of the bag, Otto was surprised at the amount of money that his nausea returned. As Otto squatted, Subaru stood behind him, clutching a fist as he finally had hope in his hand. So many obstacles had been placed in his path, but he had overcome them all somehow. He still didn't know the true nature of the obstacle blocking Amelia's path, but if he stood at her side, he'd no doubt find out. And that was the kind of problem only Subaru could solve. Just wait. Soon. Soon. The twisted smile on Subaru's lips was plain for anyone to see. And that smile might have come over him from the thought of fulfilling his objective of saving Amelia. Perhaps it had another cause even he didn't know, since he didn't realize he was smiling at all.